I was staring at the certified letter in my hand when I realized that Karen Whitmore, HOA board president, had officially lost her mind. The letter informed me that I was in violation of Section 14.7 of the Meadowbrook Heights Community Guidelines for installing unauthorized exterior modifications on my property. The offense: my roof heating cables. The same cables that I'd installed 3 weeks ago with proper permits, professional installation, and full code compliance. I'd even submitted my application to the Architectural Review Committee 2 months before installation and received written approval. Yet here I was, standing in my driveway in Grand Rapids, Michigan, holding a notice of violation with a threatened fine of $500 if I didn't remove them within 14 days. My name is Vincent Aldridge, and I'd lived in this neighborhood for 6 years without a single problem. I'm an aerospace engineer at a local manufacturing plant, and I'd always prided myself on following rules and doing things properly. When I bought this house, the HOA seemed reasonable enough. Monthly dues were fair, the common areas were well maintained, and the restrictions seemed designed to preserve property values rather than micromanage homeowners. That changed 8 months ago when Karen Whitmore got elected as president. Karen was exactly what you'd picture when you heard that name. She was 53 years old with that specific haircut that demanded to speak to managers everywhere, drove a white Lexus SUV, and had apparently decided that her purpose in life was to make everyone else miserable. Since taking office, she'd sent violation notices to at least 20 homeowners for infractions ranging from having the wrong shade of mailbox to parking an RV in someone's driveway for 3 hours while they loaded it for vacation. I walked back inside my house and tossed the letter onto my kitchen counter. My girlfriend Hannah Sullivan was making coffee and looked up when she heard me come in. "What's wrong?" she asked, reading my expression. "Karen struck again," I said, sliding the letter across the counter to her. Hannah picked it up and read through it, her eyebrows rising higher with each sentence. She was a real estate attorney, which meant she knew exactly how absurd this was. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You have written approval from the committee. I saw it myself." "I know. I've got the approval letter in my files, the permit from the city, and the installation certificate from the contractor stating everything meets Michigan building code." Hannah set down the letter and pulled out her phone. "When did you submit your architectural review application?" "October 15th. Got approval on October 23rd. Installation happened November 12th through November 14th. And this violation notice is dated yesterday, December 6th, Hannah said, scrolling through something on her phone. "Let me see your HOA governing documents." I pulled out my laptop and accessed the digital copies of all the Meadowbrook Heights documentation. Hannah spent the next 20 minutes reading through the covenants, conditions, and restrictions while I paced around the kitchen. "Okay," she finally said. Section 14.7 does cover exterior modifications, but it explicitly states that any modification approved by the Architectural Review Committee is permitted. You have that approval. This violation notice is completely baseless. So what do I do? You respond in writing, cite your approval, and request an immediate withdrawal of the violation. If they don't comply, you can request a hearing with the board. I didn't want a hearing with the board. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted my heating cables to do their job when the real Michigan winter hit. We were already getting snow, and these cables were essential for preventing ice dams that had caused $4,000 in damage to my roof 2 winters ago. But I also wasn't about to back down from someone who was clearly abusing their authority. I spent the next hour drafting a response letter. I kept it professional and factual, citing the exact date of my application, the approval I'd received, the permit number from the city, and the relevant sections of the HOA documents that supported my position. I attached copies of everything: the approval letter, the permit, the installation certificate, photographs of the installation, and even a letter from my insurance company recommending heating cables for ice dam prevention. I sent the letter via certified mail and email on December 7th, making sure I had delivery confirmation for both. 3 days passed without a response. Then, on December 10th, I received another letter. This one informed me that my previous architectural approval had been administratively revoked due to aesthetic concerns raised by neighborhood residents. I called Hannah immediately. "They can't do that," she said after I read her the letter. "Once they've given approval, they can't just revoke it retroactively. That's not how any of this works." "Well, they just did." "Do you want me to write them a letter?" As an attorney, I considered it. "Not yet. Let me request a hearing first." Maybe this is just Karen being Karen, and the rest of the board will see reason. I submitted my request for a hearing that same day. According to the HOA bylaws, they had to schedule it within 30 days. I received a response on December 12th, scheduling the hearing for December 20th at 7 in the evening at the community clubhouse. The next week dragged by. I found myself constantly thinking about the hearing, running through arguments in my head, double-checking my documentation. Hannah helped me prepare a presentation with photos, permits, and relevant code sections. I even got a written statement from my contractor, Mike Hendricks, explaining the installation process and confirming that everything exceeded code requirements. December 20th arrived with 6 inches of fresh snow on the ground. As I drove to the community clubhouse that evening, I could see my heating cables doing exactly what they were supposed to do, preventing ice buildup along the edges of my roof. Every house on my street had similar weather-related modifications. The Johnsons had ice cables. The Pratts had gutter guards. The Chens had a whole array of weather monitoring equipment mounted on their roof. But apparently, only my installation was a problem. The clubhouse meeting room was set up with a long table at the front where 5 board members sat. Karen Whitmore occupied the center seat, looking every bit the self-important bureaucrat. To her left were Doug Morrison and Patricia Hayes, both in their 60s and both looking vaguely uncomfortable. To her right were Jennifer Lynch and Robert Torres, younger members who'd been elected the same time as Karen. About 15 other homeowners sat in chairs facing the board, apparently there to watch the proceedings. I recognized most of them. Some gave me supportive nods. Others looked away. "This hearing will now come to order," Karen announced, banging a gavel that seemed unnecessarily dramatic. "We're here to discuss the violation notice issued to Vincent Aldridge of 847 Maple Ridge Drive regarding unauthorized exterior modifications. Mr. Aldridge, you have 15 minutes to present your case." 15 minutes. I'd been given 15 minutes to defend an installation that I'd properly permitted and received approval for. But I stood up and walked to the front of the room with my folder of documents and my laptop. "Thank you," I said, connecting my laptop to the projector. "I appreciate the opportunity to address this issue. On October 15th, I submitted an architectural review application for the installation of roof heating cables on my property. This is the application." I pulled up the document on the screen, showing the date stamp and confirmation number. On October 23rd, I received written approval from the Architectural Review Committee. This is that approval letter, signed by Committee Chair Sharon Delaney. I displayed the approval letter, complete with Sharon's signature and the official committee stamp. Following this approval, I obtained a building permit from the city of Grand Rapids. Permit number 2024-11-0847, issued November 7th. The installation was completed by licensed contractor Mike Hendricks between November 12th and November 14th. Here is the certificate of completion, confirming that all work meets or exceeds Michigan Building Code requirements. I went through each document methodically, then showed photographs of the installation from multiple angles. The heating cables are installed along the roof edge and in the valleys, exactly as shown in my original application. They're secured with clips specifically designed for this purpose, and all electrical connections were made by a licensed electrician and inspected by the city. The cables are dark brown, matching my roof shingles, and are barely visible from ground level. They serve a critical function in preventing ice dams, which caused significant damage to my roof in the winter of 2023. I paused and looked at each board member. I followed every required procedure. I submitted my application, received approval, obtained the necessary permits, hired licensed professionals, and ensured code compliance. The violation notice. I received cites no specific violation other than unauthorized exterior modifications, which is factually incorrect since the modifications were authorized. The subsequent letter claiming administrative revocation of my approval provides no legal basis for such revocation and violates the HOA's own governing documents, which do not include provisions for retroactive approval revocation. I clicked to my final slide. I'm requesting that the board immediately withdraw the violation notice and affirm my right to maintain the heating cables as approved. Thank you. I sat down. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Karen cleared her throat. Mr. Aldridge, while your documentation appears to be in order, the board has received numerous complaints from neighbors regarding the aesthetic impact of your installation. Can you provide specifics on these complaints? I asked. How many complaints from whom and what specifically are the aesthetic concerns? Karen's lips tightened. We don't disclose complainant identities. I'm not asking for names. I'm asking for numbers and specific concerns. How many complaints were received? Several. Is several 3, 5, 10? That's not relevant. It's absolutely relevant, I said, feeling my frustration rise. You're threatening me with fines based on alleged complaints, but you won't tell me how many complaints there were or what they said. That's not transparent governance. Patricia Hayes, one of the older board members, spoke up. Karen, I think Mr. Aldridge has a point. If we're basing our decision on neighbor complaints, we should at least quantify them. Karen shot Patricia a look that could have frozen water. The number of complaints doesn't matter. Even one legitimate complaint requires us to review the approval. But I already had approval, I said. You can't just revoke it because someone complained after the fact. The board maintains discretion to revoke approvals if circumstances change, Karen said. Show me where in the governing documents it says that, I challenged. Hannah had helped me search through every page of the HOA documentation. There was no provision for retroactive revocation of architectural approvals, except in cases of fraud or misrepresentation, neither of which applied here. Karen shuffled through some papers in front of her. It's implied in the board's general authority to maintain community standards. Implied authority isn't actual authority, I said. The governing documents are quite specific about the approval process and what happens when approval is granted. Robert Torres leaned forward. I've reviewed Mr. Aldridge's file, and I have to agree with him. The approval was properly granted, and I don't see a legitimate basis for revocation. The heating cables are minimally visible and serve a legitimate functional purpose. They're an eyesore, Karen snapped. Have you actually looked at them? Robert asked. I drove by his house before the meeting. I could barely see them from the street. That's not the point, Karen said, her voice rising. The point is that we have standards, and those standards need to be enforced. What standard is being violated? I asked. Please cite the specific provision. Karen's face was turning red. This hearing is not an opportunity for you to interrogate the board, Mr. Aldridge. Actually, that's exactly what a hearing is for, Patricia said quietly. He has the right to understand the basis for the violation. The tension in the room was palpable. Several of the homeowners watching the proceedings were whispering to each other. Jennifer Lynch, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. I move that we table this matter until the next board meeting so we can fully review the governing documents and ensure we're acting appropriately. Second, Robert said immediately. Karen looked furious. A motion has been made and seconded. All in favor. Patricia, Robert, and Jennifer raised their hands. Opposed? Karen and Doug raised theirs. Motion carries, Karen said through gritted teeth. This matter is tabled until the January 15th board meeting. This hearing is adjourned. She banged her gavel hard enough that I thought she might crack the table. As people filed out, several homeowners came up to me to express support. Tom Johnson, who lived 3 doors down, shook my hand. This is ridiculous, he said. I've got the same cables on my roof. Installed them 4 years ago with HOA approval. If she comes after yours, mine are next. Did you get written approval? I asked. Of course. Same process you followed. Another homeowner, Lisa Chen, approached. Karen tried to make me remove my weather station last month. Said it was an unapproved structure. Never mind that I've had it for 6 years and got approval from the previous board. The picture was becoming clearer. This wasn't really about my heating cables. This was about Karen asserting authority and trying to force homeowners to comply with her personal preferences, regardless of what the rules actually said. Hannah was waiting for me in the parking lot. I'd asked her not to come inside because I didn't want to seem like I was bringing legal representation to what was supposed to be an informal hearing. How did it go? She asked as I got in her car. They tabled it until January, I said, filling her in on the details. That's actually good, she said. It means at least 3 board members aren't willing to support Karen's nonsense, but you need to use this time wisely. Start documenting everything. Talk to other homeowners who have had similar issues. Build a record. Over the next 2 weeks, I did exactly that. I created a detailed timeline of every interaction with the HOA. I talked to 9 other homeowners who'd received questionable violation notices from Karen. I compiled copies of their approval letters and violation notices. A pattern emerged. In every case, Karen had either tried to revoke previously granted approvals or was enforcing rules that didn't actually exist in the governing documents. I also started attending the regular HOA board meetings, which were held on the first Tuesday of each month. The January 7th meeting was eye-opening. Karen ran the meetings like a dictator. She cut people off when they tried to speak during the homeowner comment period. She refused to allow discussion on topics she didn't like. When Doug Morrison suggested getting quotes for repainting the clubhouse, Karen immediately dismissed it without letting other board members weigh in. During the comment period, I raised my hand. Yes, Mr. Aldridge, Karen said with obvious irritation. I'd like to request that the board consider revising the Architectural Review Committee procedures to include appeals rights and clearer standards for approval revocation. Your request is noted. Next. Wait, I said. Can we discuss this? I think other homeowners would benefit from clearer procedures. This is the comment period, not the discussion period. You've made your comment. Next. I sat down, frustrated. Patricia Hayes caught my eye and gave me a small, sympathetic shrug. The hearing reconvened on January 15th. I showed up with an even more comprehensive presentation, including testimonials from other homeowners about Karen's pattern of overreach. This time, there were at least 30 homeowners in the audience. Word had gotten around that something was happening with the HOA board, and people were paying attention. Karen called the meeting to order and immediately tried to move into executive session to discuss my case. "Point of order," Robert Torres said. "This is a violation hearing. Those are required to be open to the community per our bylaws unless there's a legitimate reason to close the session." "I believe there is," Karen said. "What reason?" "Legal concerns." "We don't have any legal concerns unless we're doing something wrong," Robert said. "I move that we conduct this hearing in open session." "Second," Jennifer said. "All in favor?" Karen asked coldly. 4 hands went up. Only Doug voted with Karen. "Fine," Karen said. "Mr. Aldridge, the board has reviewed your case. While you did receive initial approval for your roof heating cables, that approval was granted in error. The Architectural Review Committee failed to properly consider the aesthetic impact on the neighborhood." "Who determined it was granted in error?" I asked. "I did, as board president." "Did the Architectural Review Committee agree with that assessment?" "The committee is advisory. The board has final authority." Actually, according to Section 8.4 of the bylaws, the Architectural Review Committee has independent authority to approve or deny applications. The board can only overrule the committee with a 2/3 vote and only before installation occurs. You can't retroactively overrule an approval. I'd done my homework. Hannah had helped me find this provision buried in the bylaws. Karen's face went white, then red. "That's your interpretation." "It's not an interpretation. It's the literal text of the bylaws. Would you like me to read it aloud?" "That won't be necessary," Patricia said. "I reviewed the section myself. Mr. Aldridge is correct. The board doesn't have authority to revoke a committee approval after installation, especially not unilaterally." "Are you all going to side with him over me?" Karen demanded, looking at the other board members. "We're not siding with anyone," Robert said. "We're following the governing documents." "This is insubordination," Karen said. "This is proper governance," Jennifer responded. The room was dead silent. This wasn't just about my heating cables anymore. This was a full confrontation over how the HOA was being run. Doug Morrison finally spoke up. "Karen, I think we need to step back here. Maybe we should get a legal opinion on the board's authority." "We don't need a legal opinion," Karen said. "I know what my authority is." "Your authority," Patricia said, emphasizing the word slightly, "is limited by the governing documents." "We all agreed to those limits when we took our positions." Karen stood up abruptly. "I move that we uphold the violation and fine Mr. Aldridge $500 for failure to comply." "I second that motion," Doug said, though he looked uncomfortable doing it. "Discussion," Patricia said. "I think we need to seriously consider whether this violation is legally supportable. Mr. Aldridge has shown clear approval, clear permits, and clear code compliance. If we uphold this violation, we're opening ourselves to legal liability." "There's no liability," Karen said. "HOAs have broad authority to enforce standards." "Broad authority doesn't mean unlimited authority," Robert said. "I'm voting against this motion." "As am I," Jennifer said. "And I," Patricia added. "All in favor of upholding the violation," Karen said. She and Doug raised their hands. "Opposed," Patricia, Robert, and Jennifer raised theirs. "The motion fails," Karen said, practically spitting the words. "Fine, Mr. Aldridge, your violation is dismissed, but don't think this is over." "Is that a threat?" I asked. "It's a statement of fact. This board meeting is adjourned." She grabbed her things and stormed out of the clubhouse. Doug followed her, looking miserable. Several homeowners came up to congratulate me, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt uneasy. Karen's parting words seemed less like sour grapes and more like a promise of continued harassment. I was right to be concerned. 2 days later, I received a new violation notice. This one cited me for excessive outdoor lighting due to the small indicator light on the control unit for my heating cables. The light was maybe half an inch in diameter and barely visible unless you were standing right next to it. The day after that, another notice arrived, this time for improper storage of equipment, because I'd left a snow shovel leaning against my garage door while I took a break from clearing my driveway. Then another notice for lawn equipment visible from street, because my lawnmower was visible through my garage window. Karen was blanketing me with violations, each more absurd than the last, and she wasn't just targeting me. Tom Johnson received a notice about his heating cables. Lisa Chen got cited for her weather station again. At least 6 other homeowners who'd attended the hearing received notices for various minor issues. This was retaliation, plain and simple. I documented everything. Each notice, the date received, the alleged violation, and my response. I took photographs proving that the alleged violations were either non-existent or so minor that they'd never been enforced before. On January 28th, I filed a formal complaint against Karen with the board, citing harassment and abuse of authority. I included documentation of all the violation notices I'd received, statements from other homeowners experiencing similar treatment, and a detailed analysis showing that these violations were only being enforced against people who'd opposed Karen at meetings. The next board meeting was February 4th. I showed up with Hannah this time. She wasn't representing me officially, but I wanted her there for moral support and to observe the proceedings. The meeting room was packed. At least 50 homeowners had shown up, more than I'd ever seen at an HOA meeting. Karen called the meeting to order and tried to immediately move to new business, but Patricia interrupted. Before we proceed, we need to address the complaint filed by Mr. Aldridge and the broader pattern of violation notices that have been issued over the past 3 weeks. That's not on the agenda, Karen said. I'm adding it to the agenda, Patricia said. I move that we discuss the board's violation enforcement practices. Second, Robert said, all in favor. Everyone except Karen and Doug voted yes. Fine, Karen said. What do you want to discuss? Patricia pulled out a stack of papers. In the 3 weeks since Mr. Aldridge's hearing, this board has issued 47 violation notices to homeowners. In all of last year, we issued 32 total. That's a dramatic increase. Moreover, I've reviewed each of these violations, and 39 of them are for issues that have never been enforced before or are so minor that they don't reasonably constitute violations. Are you questioning my judgment? Karen asked. I'm questioning whether these violations are being issued in good faith or as retaliation against homeowners who have disagreed with you. The room erupted in murmurs. Several homeowners started talking at once. Karen banged her gavel. This is outrageous. I have done nothing but try to maintain the standards of this community. By threatening people with fines for having snow shovels visible, Robert asked. By citing someone for an indicator light the size of a pencil eraser. Come on, Karen. This isn't about standards. This is about control. How dare you, Karen said, her voice shaking with rage. I dare because it's true, Robert said. And it needs to stop. We're supposed to be serving this community, not terrorizing it. Jennifer spoke up. I move that we rescind all violation notices issued in the past month and establish a review process requiring 2 board members to approve any violation notice before it's sent. Second, Patricia said immediately. That would undermine the board president's authority, Doug protested. Good, Robert said. That authority is being abused. The vote was 3 in favor, 2 opposed. The motion passed. Karen stood up, her face purple with fury. You have no right to undermine me like this. I am the president of this board. You're one member of a 5-person board, Patricia said calmly. You don't have unilateral authority. This is a coup, Karen said. I won't stand for it. Then resign, Robert said. The room went completely silent. Karen stared at Robert, then at the other board members, then at the crowd of homeowners. She grabbed her purse and pointed a shaking finger at me. This is your fault, she said. All of this. You and your stupid heating cables. This is about you abusing your authority, I said. The heating cables were just the first time someone pushed back. Karen made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a scream, then stormed out of the clubhouse. Doug stood up like he was going to follow her, then seemed to think better of it and sat back down. Patricia took a deep breath. Well, that was dramatic. Let's continue with the meeting. The rest of the meeting focused on establishing better procedures for violation notices and discussing other community business. I stayed until the end, but my mind was elsewhere. Something about Karen's reaction bothered me. She'd seemed more than just angry. She'd seemed panicked. Over the next few days, I learned why. One of the homeowners who'd received multiple violation notices was an accountant named David Park. During the meeting, he'd mentioned something about irregularities in the HOA financial reports. I hadn't paid much attention at the time, but apparently several people had followed up with him afterward. On February 9th, David requested a formal audit of the HOA finances, which he was entitled to do as a homeowner. Patricia, Robert, and Jennifer immediately supported the request. Doug tried to block it, but he was outvoted. The audit began on February 15th. By February 22nd, the auditor had found significant problems. Karen had been embezzling HOA funds. It wasn't a massive amount in any single transaction, but over the 8 months she'd been president, she'd siphoned off nearly $18,000 through false vendor invoices and inflated expense reports. She'd created fake companies, submitted invoices for work that was never done, and paid herself for supplies that were never purchased. The auditor presented the findings to the board on February 25th at an emergency meeting. I wasn't there, but Hannah was friends with Jennifer Lynch's sister, and word spread quickly through the community. The board voted unanimously to remove Karen from the presidency and refer the matter to the Kent County Sheriff's Office. On February 27th, I was working from home when I saw a sheriff's car pull up to Karen's house, 3 streets over from mine. 2 deputies went to the door. Karen answered, and even from a distance, I could see her arguing with them. After about 5 minutes, they placed her in handcuffs and led her to the car. She was charged with embezzlement and fraud. The HOA also filed a civil suit to recover the stolen funds. Doug Morrison resigned from the board the same day Karen was arrested, apparently to avoid any potential liability. He claimed he'd known nothing about the financial irregularities, which might have been true. Karen had kept the financial records close and rarely shared detailed reports with the rest of the board. The next few weeks were surreal. The story made the local news. HOA president arrested for embezzlement after heating cable dispute was the headline in the Grand Rapids press. Reporters called me for interviews. I declined most of them, not wanting to make this about me, but I did speak to one reporter to set the record straight about the timeline and the heating cables. The HOA held a special election in March to fill the vacant board seats. 2 new members were elected, both of whom ran on platforms of transparency and reasonable governance. Patricia Hayes was elected as the new president. One of her first acts was to formally apologize to me and the other homeowners who'd been targeted with frivolous violations. She also established new policies requiring detailed financial reporting, multiple approvals for any expenditure over $500, and quarterly audits. The Architectural Review Committee's independence was clarified and strengthened. A formal appeals process was created for violation notices. Karen's criminal case moved through the system slowly. Her attorney tried to argue that the HOA funds weren't really public money and that embezzlement charges didn't apply. The prosecutor disagreed, and in July, Karen pleaded guilty to felony embezzlement and fraud. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA plus additional fines. The civil suit took longer, but the HOA eventually recovered most of the stolen money, though legal fees ate up a chunk of what they got back. Through all of this, my heating cables continued to do their job. We had a brutal winter with several major ice storms, and my roof came through without any damage. Several of my neighbors who didn't have heating cables weren't so lucky. Tom Johnson actually came over in March to ask for my contractor's information, because he wanted to expand his cable system after seeing how well mine worked. By the time spring arrived, life in Meadowbrook Heights had largely returned to normal. The new board was competent and fair. The community trust that Karen had damaged was slowly being rebuilt. People were actually showing up to board meetings again, wanting to be involved in community governance. I was cleaning out my garage in mid-April when Patricia Hayes stopped by. She was in her gardening clothes and had dirt on her knees. "Vincent," she said, walking up my driveway. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course," I said, setting down the box I was carrying. "I wanted to thank you personally," she said, "for standing up to Karen. If you hadn't pushed back on that first violation, we might never have discovered what she was doing." "I just wanted to keep my heating cables," I said. "I wasn't trying to expose anyone." "I know." But by refusing to back down, by documenting everything, by insisting that the rules be followed, you forced us to pay attention. The rest of the board was too passive. We let Karen run things because it was easier than confronting her. That was our failure. "You voted against her when it mattered," I said. "Eventually. But I should have done it sooner. We all should have." She paused. "The reason I'm here is that we have a vacancy on the Architectural Review Committee. Sharon Delaney is moving to Arizona. I was hoping you might consider joining." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to stay as far away from HOA governance as possible after everything that had happened. But another part of me recognized that good HOA boards needed engaged homeowners who cared about fairness and following the rules. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course. Let me know by the end of the month." Hannah and I talked about it that night over dinner. She thought I should do it. "You care about this community," she said. "And you've proven that you're willing to stand up for what's right. Those are exactly the qualities the committee needs." "It's going to be more work," I said. "Everything worthwhile is more work." I agreed to join the committee, and my first meeting was in early May. It was remarkably boring, which was exactly what an Architectural Review Committee meeting should be. We reviewed applications for a deck expansion, a fence replacement, and solar panel installation. We discussed each one based on the actual criteria in the guidelines, approved all 3 with minor modifications, and finished in under an hour. No drama. No power trips. Just homeowners trying to improve their properties, and a committee making reasonable decisions based on clear rules. It was wonderful. By summer, the Karen saga had become neighborhood legend. New homeowners moving into Meadowbrook Heights would hear the story and express amazement. Existing homeowners would tell it as a cautionary tale about HOA governance gone wrong and the importance of oversight. My heating cables, the innocent catalyst for the whole thing, sat quietly on my roof, waiting for winter. I'd occasionally look up at them and shake my head at the absurdity of how much chaos they'd caused through no fault of their own. In August, I was at a neighborhood barbecue when a homeowner I didn't know very well approached me. His name was Marcus Thompson, and he lived on the other side of the development. "You're the heating cable guy, right?" he asked. I laughed. "I guess that's what I'm known for now. I just wanted to say thanks." I had been wanting to install some exterior lighting for security purposes, but I was afraid Karen would shut it down. After everything that happened, I submitted my application and got approval in 2 weeks. The new committee is great. Over the course of the evening, 3 other people told me similar stories. The ripple effect of standing up to Karen had gone far beyond my own situation. Homeowners felt empowered to make reasonable improvements to their properties without fear of arbitrary rejection. The board was functioning as it was supposed to, making decisions based on rules rather than personal preference. That fall, Hannah and I got engaged. We started planning a wedding for the following summer. We also started talking about eventually moving to a bigger house, maybe one with enough land that we wouldn't have to deal with an HOA at all. But for now, we were staying in Meadowbrook Heights. The community had been through a trial by fire and had come out stronger. Property values were holding steady. The common areas looked great. The board was doing its job competently and transparently. In November, almost exactly 1 year after I'd installed my heating cables, I received a letter from the HOA. For a split second, my heart jumped, old instincts kicking in. Then I opened it and laughed. It was a thank you note from the board, along with a small plaque recognizing me as Homeowner of the Year for my dedication to community governance and advocacy for fair and transparent HOA management. The plaque now hangs in my garage, right next to my snow shovel and the control unit for my heating cables. Every time I see it, I remember the whole crazy ordeal. How standing up for something as simple as properly installed roof heating cables had somehow exposed embezzlement, led to an arrest, resulted in HOA reform, and ultimately made the neighborhood a better place to live. I also remember the lesson I learned through all of it. HOAs are only as good as the people running them and the homeowners holding them accountable. When everyone does their job, they can actually work pretty well. But when power goes unchecked, even something as mundane as a homeowners association can become a nightmare. Winter came again, and my heating cables performed flawlessly. No ice dams, no roof damage, no violations notices. Just a quiet, functional home improvement, doing exactly what it was designed to do. The February board meeting marked the 1-year anniversary of Karen's arrest. Patricia acknowledged it briefly, noting that the community had weathered a difficult period and emerged better for it. She announced that the HOA had fully recovered the embezzled funds, and that the money would be used to upgrade the playground equipment in the community park. After the meeting, several of us went out for coffee, something that had become a regular tradition. Patricia, Robert, Jennifer, Tom Johnson, Lisa Chen, David Park, and myself. We'd formed an unlikely alliance through shared adversity, and we'd stayed connected. "Remember when we thought this was just about heating cables?" Tom said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "I still can't believe how much money she stole," Lisa said. "And that fake vendor scheme was pretty sophisticated." Which makes me wonder how long she'd been planning it, David added. You don't just wake up one day and decide to embezzle from your HOA. She must have been setting it up for a while before she even ran for the board. The prosecutor said she'd done something similar at her previous HOA in Ohio, Patricia said. Not as much money, but similar methods. They couldn't prove it definitively, so she was never charged, but the pattern was there. So we got a professional HOA grifter, Roberts said, and she probably would have gotten away with it if she hadn't been so aggressive about enforcing petty violations, I said. If she'd just stayed under the radar and been a reasonably competent board president, nobody would have looked at the finances closely. Her ego got in the way, Jennifer said. She couldn't just steal the money quietly. She had to be in charge of everything, control everything, make sure everyone knew she was the boss. Classic authoritarian personality, Hannah said. She joined us after finishing up some work at her office. They can't help themselves. The need for control is pathological. We talked late into the evening, processing everything that had happened. By the time Hannah and I drove home, snow was falling again. Light, pretty flakes that would probably amount to an inch or two by morning. Are you glad you fought back? Hannah asked as we pulled into our driveway. I looked up at my roof, where the heating cables were outlined against the fresh snow, keeping the edges clear and preventing ice buildup. Yeah, I said. I am. Not because of what happened to Karen or the recognition or any of that, but because I learned that standing up for yourself matters. Rules matter, accountability matters, and sometimes one person refusing to back down can make a real difference. Very philosophical for a Friday night, Hannah said, smiling. I'm a deep guy, I said. You're a guy who really likes his heating cables. I really do like my heating cables. We went inside, and I made hot chocolate while Hannah changed into comfortable clothes. We spent the evening on the couch, watching the snow fall outside, warm and comfortable in our home that had been at the center of so much drama just because I'd wanted to protect my roof. The next morning, I shoveled the driveway and waved to Tom Johnson as he did the same 3 houses down. The sun was bright, and the snow sparkled. My heating cables had done their job overnight, keeping ice from forming. Several neighbors were out dealing with ice dams and icicles. My roof was clear. I went back inside and made breakfast. Hannah came down in her pajamas, looking sleepy and happy. What are you smiling about? She asked. Just thinking about how different things could have been, I said. If I'd just taken down the heating cables when Karen first complained. If I'd decided it wasn't worth the fight. But you didn't, Hannah said. No, I didn't. Because you're stubborn, she said, kissing my cheek. Because I was right, I corrected. That too. Life moved on. Spring came, then summer. Hannah and I got married in June in a small ceremony at a garden venue outside the city. Several of our neighbors attended, including Patricia, Tom, and Lisa. Even Mike Hendricks, the contractor who'd installed my heating cables, came to the wedding. During the reception, Tom gave a toast that included a joke about heating cables bringing people together. Everyone laughed. It had become part of the neighborhood folklore, the story we told to illustrate how random events can have massive consequences. By the time our first anniversary rolled around, Karen was out of prison, having served her sentence. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she'd moved to Florida and was keeping a low profile. Part of me wondered if she'd try the same scheme somewhere else, but that wasn't my problem anymore. Meadowbrook Heights had moved on. The HOA was functioning well. Property values were up. People were engaged in community governance without it being contentious. The Architectural Review Committee was approving reasonable requests efficiently. Board meetings were well attended but peaceful. Sometimes I'd see the plaque in my garage and remember everything that had happened. The violation notices, the hearings, the confrontations, Karen's arrest, the reforms that followed. All of it traced back to a simple decision to install heating cables on my roof and a refusal to back down when that decision was challenged unfairly. It was a reminder that you never really know when a small stand on principle will turn into something bigger. That everyday choices about how we respond to injustice matter. That one person can make a difference, even in something as mundane as a neighborhood dispute over roof heating cables. The cables are still up there, installed perfectly to code, doing their job every winter. They'll probably last another 15 years or more. And for all that time, there'll be a reminder of that chaotic year when a simple home improvement project became a catalyst for change. I never did end up moving to a house without an HOA. Meadowbrook Heights had become home in a deeper way after everything we'd been through. We'd built something here, Hannah and I and the other homeowners who'd stood up for accountability and fairness. We'd turned a dysfunctional organization into a functional one. We'd taken a bad situation and made it better. That's worth staying for. That's worth fighting for. Even if the fight starts with something as simple as heating cables on a roof, because it's never really about the heating cables. It's about standing up for what's right. It's about refusing to let petty tyrants abuse their power. It's about holding people accountable and insisting that rules apply fairly to everyone. Those lessons matter in HOAs. They matter in neighborhoods. They matter in life. And they all started, for me at least, with a certified letter on a cold December morning, telling me that my perfectly installed, fully permitted, completely legal heating cables were somehow a violation. I'm glad I fought back. I'm glad I didn't back down. And I'm glad that my heating cables are still right where they belong, keeping my roof safe through every Michigan winter that comes.